This tutorial is for students who are ready to start part 2 of weaving on their circular loom. So at this point, you should have already dressed your paper plate loom. So this is your circular loom here, and you have all of your warp strings, and you should have your name and your class code on the back. If you don't have that, please go do that right now. So to get ready for this part, you're going to need your dress loom, a pair of scissors, one color yarn, and a needle. That's all you need at this point. And remember, this is kind of our end goal, so what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be adding our weft strings, which are our over-under strings. So for starters, we're going to get our yarn, any color that you want, and we're going to measure 2 arm lengths. So we're going to go from our hand up to our shoulder, and when we get to that point, we will snip. Okay, now I have my 2 arm lengths of yarn. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to thread my needle. So just like I showed you in the level 1 tutorials, when we go to thread our needle, we pinch, push through the eye of the needle, and pull out. Okay, and you want to leave yourself a little tail. If you want, you can loosely knot this around the eye of your needle. But if you're a level 2 weaver by now, you should be comfortable enough with that tail that you're not pulling so hard that you're pulling the tail through. So I'm not going to work with that knotted. I like my loose tail. So now I'm going to go to the end of my yarn, and I'm going to find any of these warp strings, and I'm going to go underneath one of them, pull it all the way up to the knot in the center, and I'm going to do a little knot just like I'm tying my shoe, and then I will knot it one more time just to secure it, and then very carefully I'm going to snip as close to the knot as I can without breaking the knot. Now I'm going to start my weaving. So I'm going to pretend that this is over. So for what I'm going to do is for my next spoke here, so it's kind of like spokes of a wheel. So my next warp string, I'm going to go under. Then I'm going to go over my next and under, over, under. And now I can kind of pull some of that length through. And I want to see where I ended last. I ended under, so now I'm going to go over, under, over, under, over, under. You'll already see it starting to curve. So I went under last, and I'm going to go over, under, over, under, over, under. Pull. Now when you pull this, you want to pull it snug enough that it's not all loose, but you still want to see a tiny bit of your warp string color coming through. Now that's if you want to eventually take this under the plate. Off of the plate. So I'm going to keep going with that pattern. Over, under, over, under. And the reason why I'm talking to you about how tight you're pulling is if you are someone that winds up pulling too tight, I usually don't recommend that you take it off the plate. So if you want to leave it on the plate and just let it be decorative, and I can show you some kind of cool things we can do around the frame later to make it look finished, that's one option you have. So if you pull real tight like I did here, you can do that. But if we wind up taking this off of the loom, then we wind up having something that gets kind of like puckered like this, and it looks kind of basket-like, but the only thing is it's not really solid enough to work as a basket. So if it's tight, you keep it on the loom, but if you want to take it off of the loom, just make sure that you leave it a little bit looser. So I would just keep following that over-under pattern all the way around. Now to kind of speed things up, let's pretend that I kept doing that, and now I'm at the end of that yellow string. So now at this point, I can go get another color of yarn, and also I can get a little cup and fill it with a few beads. So we're going to start to get fancy. So once you're out of your kind of middle stage there, and you'll notice I have kind of the black showing through there, that means it's not too tight. So this one could come off. I'm going to get another arm length or two of yarn. Okay, so remember, if you have more arm lengths, that's going to be kind of a thicker weft row, and less will be a skinnier one. So I'm going to take this off of the needle, and I'm just going to tie these two together, these two strings together. Now ideally you want this knot to wind up underneath a warp string, but if it doesn't, that's not the end of the world. Okay, so tie it like that, and then super carefully snip those ends there without snipping your needle. And then you're going to thread your needle again, and then you can just continue just as if those were connected to each other. Okay, so I was under last, this was over, now under, over. Now I want to show you kind of a cool variation on weaving that you can do. You can start to add some beads if you would like to add kind of a different texture to it. So I usually recommend, you do one row with a new color, keep the middle solid, and then you can start to add beads. So get your little cup, and you just slide it on the needle, slide it down. Okay, and then, so I was under, now I go over, under. So you want to kind of space out these beads. You don't want to do them, every spoke, but maybe every few, or maybe you count out, create a pattern, and you just slide them on. So you would just continue weaving just like you were, but now the variation is that you are sliding a bead on every once in a while to kind of change that texture. So you would continue this until you get to the edge of the plate, or close to the edge of the plate like we did here, and then you can watch the part 3 video, which is going to show you how to finish up your weaving.